For centuries, the galaxy had been dominated by ancient empires and vast federations, each vying for power and control over the stars. The more established races believed that peace was their birthright. They had achieved unimaginable technological advancements, conquering space with ease, and creating civilizations that spanned light years. Life on the fringes of the galaxy seemed quiet, almost insignificant. But on the edge of their reach, in the outer sectors where few dared to venture, there were whispers, rumors of something that would shake the galaxy to its very foundation. It was a story passed down through generations, originating from a long-forgotten race that had once thrived in the farthest corners of the galaxy. The prophecy spoke of a time when a powerful warship, built by a primitive species, would appear from a distant, backwater world. It would come not with the might of established empires, but with the pure, raw strength of a species that had yet to fully discover its potential, a species that had been underestimated for millennia: humanity. At first, these stories were little more than myth, a tale of old to entertain the young and keep ancient traditions alive. Even the most advanced races dismissed it as superstition, a primitive belief that had no place in a galaxy dominated by logic and science. The idea that a small, insignificant planet like Earth could give birth to a warship powerful enough to alter the balance of power in the galaxy seemed laughable. But as the years passed, and civilizations rose and fell, something began to stir in the stars. The signs, once vague and indistinct, started to become clearer. Ancient ruins on distant planets, scattered artifacts that seemed out of place in time, and unusual energy signatures emanating from a planet called Earth. A few curious explorers ventured to this remote world, only to find a species on the verge of something extraordinary. Though humans had not yet taken their first steps into the cosmos, the universe could sense that something was brewing. It was not until the disappearance of a mighty fleet, one of the most feared and respected in the galaxy, that the ancient prophecy began to gain serious attention. The fleet, a massive armada from the Vekler Empire, was sent to the edge of the galaxy on a reconnaissance mission. The Veklers were a race known for their ruthless tactics and unrivaled space combat prowess. But they never returned. A few scattered signals, broken and distorted, were all that remained of the great fleet. The most chilling part, the last transmission was intercepted just before silence fell. A single, fragmented word: human. The galaxy's powers were shaken. If this was true, if the prophecy had any merit, then Earth's hidden potential was far greater than anyone had imagined. A warship, unlike anything they had ever encountered, was rising from the depths of a world they had dismissed for so long. The whispers grew louder, no longer dismissed as fairy tales. The galaxy had always believed itself to be untouchable, until now. But no one knew when Earth would strike, or what form the warship would take. The question was no longer a matter of if, but when. And when it came, would the galaxy be ready? The universe had underestimated Earth for far too long. What the galaxy's greatest empires had failed to recognize was that humanity, in its quiet corner of the universe, had been preparing for something that would forever change the stars. Earth's rise was not an accident. It was the result of decades, if not centuries, of slow, deliberate advancement. While the galactic powers had been busy consolidating their influence and building their empires, humanity had been quietly studying, learning, and developing in secrecy. For the longest time, Earth had been confined to its small corner of the Milky Way. To the galaxy, it was a pale blue dot, barely noticeable among the glittering expanse of more advanced civilizations. But Earth's isolation had its advantages. While the more powerful races honed their technologies through military conquest, Earth focused on something different: innovation. Earth's greatest minds, brilliant scientists and engineers, worked together to develop technologies that surpassed anything the galaxy had seen before. They had built their warship, a massive, heavily armored vessel equipped with weapons that would make even the most advanced alien fleets tremble. The warship, which had been in development for decades, was not just a machine of destruction. It was a symbol of human ingenuity and resilience. The ship was powered by a core that tapped into an energy source so powerful, no alien race had even begun to understand it. It was unlike any technology known to the galaxy, drawing upon the untapped potential of Earth's resources and combining them in ways that seemed almost magical to those who looked upon it. The ship's design was sleek, yet unyielding, with adaptive armor that could change in response to incoming attacks, ensuring that no weapon in the galaxy could break through its defenses. But what truly set Earth's warship apart from anything the galaxy had seen was its eye, an advanced intelligence system capable of learning and evolving with every battle. It was not just a tool. It was a partner, a thinking, calculating entity that could anticipate enemy movements before they even happened. With this eye, the warship could react in ways that no other fleet could match, giving humanity the edge in any engagement. As the warship completed its final stages of construction, Earth's leaders knew the time had come to make their presence known. The ship was ready. Its weapons were fully charged, and its crew, a group of hand-picked individuals, had been trained for years to face the unimaginable challenges that lay ahead. They were the best humanity had to offer, brave, intelligent, and resolute in their belief that Earth could change the course of history. In the quiet hours before the warship's launch, Earth's government made a final decision. They would not reveal their hand to the galaxy all at once. Instead, they would begin with small, calculated steps, testing the waters, showing the galaxy that they were ready to defend their world, but also to dominate the stars. Their message was clear. Earth had arrived, and no one would stand in their way. The first test was a simple one. A lone scout ship, equipped with a small fleet of drones, was sent to the outer reaches of the galaxy, where the first whispers of Earth's power had begun to spread. It didn't take long for the scout ship to encounter a lone alien vessel, a mercenary ship hired by the galaxy's empires to watch for threats. The humans made no effort to communicate. Instead, they engaged in a sudden, overwhelming strike, taking the alien vessel by surprise and leaving it drifting in space, helpless. The first shot had been fired, but it was only the beginning. The warship was coming, and the galaxy would soon know what humanity was capable of. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. The first true encounter with Earth's warship came sooner than any of the galaxy's empires had expected. The tension had been building for months, with rumors spreading across the stars about the mysterious human vessel, but no one could have predicted the sheer scale of its power. What started as whispers of an impossible force quickly turned into cold, undeniable reality. The first ship to come face to face with Earth's warship was a cruiser from the Ekthor Dominion, a highly advanced race with a reputation for dominance in deep space combat. The Ekthor had conquered countless worlds, defeating their enemies with superior firepower, ruthless tactics, and overwhelming numbers. They were accustomed to victory, accustomed to being feared. So when they received word that a human vessel had been spotted in a remote part of their territory, they were curious but dismissive. They had faced countless challenges, and this would be no different, they thought. It would be just another quick victory to add to their endless list of conquests. The Ekthor cruiser, a heavily armed vessel designed for fast engagements, was sent to intercept the human warship. Their orders were simple: investigate, and if necessary, neutralize the threat. The captain of the cruiser, Commander Ralton, was an experienced and calculating leader, confident in his ship's ability to handle anything that came its way. As his crew approached the human ship's location, he couldn't help but wonder if the rumors were true. Could this ship really live up to the stories? As the Ekthor cruiser neared the human vessel, Ralton tried to hail the ship, eager to ascertain its intentions. There was no response. The human ship remained silent, motionless in the cold void of space, as if it were waiting for something. The commander was growing impatient. He had no time for games, and he knew he had to act quickly. "Fire at will," he ordered. The cruiser's weapons charged with a familiar hum, and in the blink of an eye, The Ekthor ship unleashed a barrage of high-powered plasma bolts, targeting the human vessel's hull. But before the first shot even made contact, the unthinkable happened. The human ship's shields flared to life, absorbing the plasma bolts as if they were nothing more than raindrops against a stone. The Ekthor crew watched in stunned disbelief as their weapons had no effect. Relton's orders became frantic. "Full barrage, all weapons, target the core," he shouted. The cruiser unleashed wave after wave of firepower, but the human warship stood unscathed. It was as though the human vessel was invincible, its defenses impenetrable. Then, without warning, the warship retaliated. A single energy blast erupted from the ship's main cannon, so intense, so fast, that the Ekthor cruiser had no chance to evade. The blast pierced the cruiser's shields like paper, slicing through its armor and exploding the core in a flash of light. In seconds, the once proud Ekthor vessel was reduced to nothing but floating debris, its entire crew lost to the cold emptiness of space. The battle was over before it had truly begun. The human ship had not only survived, it had triumphed. It wasn't just that the human warship was more powerful than expected. It was the sheer efficiency, the cold calculation, and the unrelenting nature of the attack that stunned the Ekthor and everyone else who would hear the story. The human ship had shown no mercy, no hesitation. It was not just a vessel, it was a statement. And that statement echoed through the galaxy. The Ekthor Dominion was left in chaos, their commanders scrambling to explain how their forces had been so easily obliterated. News of the human warship's power spread quickly, and with it, the first true taste of fear gripped the hearts of the galaxy's mightiest empires. The question that had haunted them all was no longer a distant possibility. It was now undeniable. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The first confrontation had left the galaxy's most powerful empire stunned, but it was just the beginning. As news of the human warship's devastating power spread across the stars, it ignited a wave of fear and uncertainty throughout the galaxy. Empires that had once viewed Earth as insignificant, a barely visible speck in the vastness of the universe, now had to confront a terrifying reality. The myth had come true. The human warship was no longer just a legend. It was a force that could not be ignored, and it was capable of bringing entire fleets to their knees. The Galactic Council, an assembly of the most influential leaders from across the galaxy, convened immediately. Leaders from the Veklar Empire, the Kalar Federation, the Nezhar Dominion, and other powerful factions gathered in secret to discuss the growing threat. These were civilizations that had been at the top for millennia, accustomed to bending the galaxy to their will. The idea that an unassuming species from a forgotten planet could challenge their supremacy was inconceivable. But the human warship had proven that Earth was not just another weak, backwater world. It was a new power, one that could not be ignored. Discussions were heated as fear took hold. The Kalar representative, a veteran of countless interstellar wars, stood at the council podium, slamming his fist down in frustration. "This cannot be allowed to stand," he shouted. "We cannot let one insignificant species rewrite the laws of power. We must unite and strike before it's too late." Other representatives nodded in agreement, the same terror in their eyes. The Veklars, who had lost an entire fleet, were the most vocal in their outrage. Their empire had prided itself on its military superiority, yet they had been outclassed by a single human ship. The Nezhars, who controlled vast stretches of the galaxy's trade routes, feared the economic chaos that might follow if humanity continued its advance. None of the old empires could afford to be seen as weak in front of their rivals. The galaxy was a delicate balance of power, and the arrival of the human warship threatened to topple everything. But despite the outrage and fear, no one had a clear answer. The council debated for hours with little progress. The power dynamics of the galaxy were not built for something like this. A coordinated response was necessary, but the complexity of it left the leaders frustrated. How could they fight an unknown enemy, a species they had never truly understood, with such advanced weaponry and tactical brilliance? None of the galaxy's finest military minds could come up with a solution. Meanwhile, the human warship continued its journey, methodically dismantling any resistance it encountered. Each skirmish added to the growing myth of humanity's might, and the fear began to spread even further. The next to fall were the Kalar, whose fleet tried to engage the human ship with a full assault. What they hadn't accounted for was the ship's adaptability. The humans seemed to always know their opponent's next move, countering every tactic with terrifying precision. The Kalar, once a proud and formidable force, were shattered in the blink of an eye. The human warship tore through their defenses, turning their flagship into a burning husk in mere minutes. It became clear, humanity was not just fighting. It was winning, and with each victory, the galaxy's former masters grew weaker. The terror of Earth's warship began to sink in. Entire civilizations that had ruled for eons were now scrambling for a way to survive. The great empires were no longer worried about dominance. They were focused on self-preservation. For the first time in their history, the galactic powers found themselves united by fear. The question that had begun as a whisper was now on everyone's lips. Could they stop the human warship? Would they have the strength to take on this new power, or would humanity rewrite the fate of the galaxy itself? The answers were still unclear, but one thing was certain. The balance of power had irrevocably shifted, and the galaxy would never be the same. As the human warship continued its unstoppable advance, the galaxy's empires found themselves in a race against time. The Council had convened again, this time with a single goal in mind: to unite and find a way to stop Earth before it could conquer the galaxy. For the first time in galactic history, alliances were forged not out of desire for dominance, but out of sheer desperation. The Veclers, the Kalar, the Nejar, and several other powerful factions put aside their rivalries, agreeing that humanity's rise posed a threat to their very existence. The resulting coalition was formidable. A combined fleet of hundreds of warships, led by the brightest military minds of the galaxy, was assembled. This was no mere show of force. This was the galaxy's best chance to face the human warship in battle. The fleet was designed with the sole purpose of overwhelming the human ship, using every tactic and strategy that the galaxy's best generals had perfected over millennia. But the galaxy's greatest minds had made a fatal assumption. They believed that numbers alone would be enough to defeat humanity. They had underestimated the human warship's adaptability and the brilliance of the AI that guided it. What they had forgotten was that Earth had been building not just a weapon, but a symbol of intelligence and innovation. Humanity's strength lay not just in its firepower, but in its ability to outthink its enemies. The coalition fleet approached Earth's warship in a coordinated formation, with the objective of surrounding it and unleashing a devastating barrage from all sides. It was a strategy that had worked countless times in the past, but as the human warship entered the battle zone, the outcome quickly became clear. The warship's AI assessed the situation in real time, instantly calculating the optimal response. Instead of staying in a static position to face the entire fleet, the warship moved with astonishing speed and precision, darting between the enemy ships, picking them off one by one. The first ship to fall was the largest of the coalition's forces, a colossal dreadnought from the Nejar Dominion. The dreadnought, brimming with heavy weaponry and defensive systems, fired its main cannon, unleashing a devastating blast at the human warship. But in a move that no one expected, the human ship teleported, vanishing from the dreadnought's sights. By the time the Nejar ship recalibrated its targeting systems, the human warship had already emerged from the other side, slamming a high-powered energy burst directly into the dreadnought's engines. The massive ship exploded in a blinding flash, sending debris scattering in every direction. The coalition fleet tried to regroup, but the human warship was relentless. It engaged in precise strikes, hitting weak points in each of the attacking ships, taking them down one by one. No amount of firepower or sheer numbers seemed to make a difference. The AI was able to anticipate each move, calculating the perfect response before the coalition ships could even react. The once confident fleet was now in disarray, their advanced tactics utterly useless against a force they couldn't even begin to comprehend. Desperation set in. The coalition commanders issued orders for a full retreat, but it was too late. The human warship's weapons were faster, its moves more calculated. The retreating ships were picked off like prey, their desperate escape attempts leading them directly into the warship's path. It wasn't just a defeat, it was a rout. In the end, the coalition fleet was broken, its once proud ships reduced to floating wreckage. The human warship had proved its point. Humanity could not only hold its own against the greatest military powers in the galaxy, but it could utterly annihilate them when the time came. The message was clear. The galaxy's empires could no longer rely on numbers, tactics, or sheer strength. Humanity had changed the rules of war. They had shown that intelligence, adaptability, and sheer willpower were just as deadly as any weapon. The galaxy's greatest minds were left scrambling, their pride shattered. No longer was it a question of whether humanity could defeat them. It was a question of how they could even begin to stop them. The devastation of the coalition fleet sent shockwaves across the galaxy. In mere days, the once feared alliance of empires lay in ruins, and humanity had proven that it was a force to be reckoned with. The balance of power had been irrevocably shifted, and the galaxy's leaders were left scrambling for answers. What they had once dismissed as impossible now stared them in the face. Earth, a planet they had barely noticed, was not just surviving. It was thriving and conquering. In the wake of the coalition's failure, the Galactic Council convened once more, this time in panic. Leaders who had once been bold and confident were now nervous and divided. The question that had been whispered in dark corners was now spoken openly. Could humanity truly take the entire galaxy? And if so, what could be done to stop it? Among the galaxy's greatest empires, a few emerged as the most desperate. The Vekler Empire, still reeling from the loss of their fleet, called for immediate action. Their leaders demanded that the galaxy unite under one banner, pooling their resources and technologies to develop a strategy to neutralize the human warship. But others, more cautious, questioned whether another confrontation would be wise. They had already seen the immense power of Earth's ship and feared that any further engagement would only result in more losses. The Nezhar Dominion, who had been humbled by their own defeat, argued for diplomacy. Perhaps, they reasoned, Earth could be reasoned with. Perhaps this new power could be brought into the galactic fold, offering Earth a place among the stars in exchange for peace. But this sentiment was quickly dismissed by the more militant factions. The idea that humanity, which had destroyed entire fleets without a second thought, could be reasoned with seemed ludicrous. The Kalar Federation, desperate to save face after their crushing defeat, proposed a different course of action. They suggested a covert operation, sending a small, highly skilled team of operatives to infiltrate Earth and sabotage the human warship from within. It was a risky, desperate move, but they were willing to take any chance at survival. As these debates raged on, one undeniable truth began to emerge. The galaxy was divided. There was no consensus on how to approach humanity's rise. Some believed that force was the only option. Others thought that negotiation was still possible, while a few even entertained the idea of offering Earth a position of influence within the galactic community. But no one, not even the most hardened military minds, could come up with a plan that guaranteed victory. Meanwhile, Earth's warship continued to press forward. Its presence felt across the galaxy like a shadow, growing ever larger. The humans had begun to systematically dismantle the infrastructure of the galactic powers, striking at key supply lines and trade routes, cutting off the flow of resources that the empires relied on. They were not just attacking military targets. They were making it clear that they intended to disrupt every facet of galactic life, to force the empires into submission through economic and strategic pressure. The human warship's AI, now fully integrated into Earth's military strategy, had become an increasingly sophisticated entity. It was no longer just a machine. It was a living, breathing extension of humanity's will. It could predict enemy movements with terrifying accuracy, ensuring that each strike was executed with devastating precision. The warship's crew, made up of Earth's finest soldiers, had become a symbol of human resolve. Their training, their unity, and their unyielding determination to defend their world drove them forward, regardless of the odds stacked against them. The galaxy had underestimated humanity before. Now, as Earth's warship continued its march, they realized their greatest mistake. Humanity had not come to the stars to be ruled by others. They had come to take their place among them, as equals or as rulers. And with each passing day, the question became less about whether humanity would conquer the galaxy and more about how soon the galaxy would be forced to accept Earth's dominance. As Earth's warship continued its relentless march, the galaxy began to tremble under the weight of humanity's power. The empires that once held unchallenged control over entire sectors of space were now on the defensive. Their once proud fleets were scattered, their leaders scrambling to hold on to whatever territories they could salvage. The galaxy had become a battlefield, and humanity's warship was the harbinger of its new, uncertain future. In every corner of the galaxy, resistance was mounting. But it was clear. The empires had underestimated humanity's resolve. Where other civilizations had relied on their technology and their numbers, humans had relied on something different: their ability to adapt, to innovate, and to never back down. Earth's warship, a symbol of human ingenuity and tenacity, seemed unstoppable. The coalition of empires, though fractured, knew that their only hope of survival lay in unity. Leaders who had once viewed each other with distrust now found themselves in the same room, bound by a single, all-consuming fear. They had lost too much to Earth to continue fighting alone. Their only chance was to combine their forces and launch a final, all-out assault against the human warship, an attack that would either break humanity's grip on the galaxy or see their own destruction. The final offensive was coordinated with precision. Thousands of ships from every corner of the galaxy gathered in the neutral zone, preparing to engage the human warship in one massive, decisive battle. The alliance was stronger than ever, armed with the latest weapons, advanced shielding technology, and the combined expertise of the galaxy's finest tacticians. This was their last stand. As the coalition fleet neared Earth's warship, the tension was palpable. Communications between the various fleets were quiet, each leader trying to keep their nerves steady. They knew the stakes had never been higher. If they failed, the galaxy as they knew it would cease to exist. Earth would have its victory, and the other empires would be relegated to the dustbin of history. The battle began with a bang. Waves of energy blasts erupted from the coalition ships, their weapons firing in unison in an attempt to overwhelm the human warship's formidable defenses. The sheer power of the assault was enough to shake the fabric of space itself. The human warship, as always, responded with eerie calm. Its AI immediately analyzed the incoming threat, calculating the most efficient way to neutralize the coalition's firepower. Within moments, the warship shifted position, evading the majority of the incoming blasts and counterattacking with deadly precision. But this time, something was different. The coalition had prepared for this. In the midst of the chaos, a massive cloaked vessel, a secret weapon built by the galaxy's most advanced races, emerged from the shadows. It was a ship unlike anything seen before. A massive dreadnought capable of bypassing Earth's shields and launching a devastating pulse weapon that could disable the human warship's core. The human ship's AI immediately recognized the threat, but it was too late. The pulse weapon fired, striking the warship directly. For a moment, the human vessel seemed to falter, its shields flickering and its engine sputtering. A collective sigh of relief echoed across the coalition fleet. Had they finally done it? Had they crippled humanity's warship? But then, the impossible happened. The human warship's shields flared back to life, brighter than before. It was as though the ship had absorbed the energy of the pulse weapon and converted it into even greater power. The pulse weapon had done nothing but fuel the warship's fury. The battle reached a fever pitch as Earth's warship retaliated. Its weapons, now powered by the absorbed energy, unleashed a devastating barrage. The cloaked dreadnought that had delivered the pulse weapon was torn apart in an instant, and the coalition ships that had once felt confident in their numbers began to realize the truth. Humanity was not just fighting to win. They were fighting for their survival, and they would not be stopped. The tipping point had come. The coalition, broken and battered, found themselves in full retreat. Their final hope of victory had turned into a nightmare. The human warship had not only survived, it had emerged stronger, more powerful than ever. The galaxy's empires had failed in their attempt to halt humanity's rise, and with each passing moment, Earth's dominance seemed less like a possibility and more like an inevitability. The final battle had left the galaxy in ruins. The coalition's fleets were shattered, their once mighty warships nothing more than smoldering wreckage scattered across the void. Earth's warship, having withstood the onslaught and emerged victorious, now stood as the undeniable symbol of humanity's dominance. The galaxy had been pushed to the brink, and in the end, it was clear. Humanity had not only survived, they had conquered. In the aftermath of the decisive battle, Earth's warship hovered over the capital planet of the Veklar Empire, a silent sentinel in the sky. The empires that once ruled the galaxy now cowered beneath its shadow, the leaders of the once mighty factions forced to acknowledge humanity's superiority. The balance of power had shifted irrevocably, and the galaxy's leaders were left with no choice but to accept the new reality. The first emissary from Earth, Captain Leah Andros, a human officer who had commanded the warship's crew throughout the campaign, descended to the planet's surface. Her mission was clear: to present humanity's terms to the remaining galactic powers and bring an end to the conflict. No longer were Earth's representatives here to negotiate for peace. They had come to impose order. The Veklar, who had once thought themselves the rulers of the galaxy, were the first to meet with the humans. Their leaders, once proud and defiant, were now subdued, their faces drawn with the weight of their defeat. They knew that they had no power left to challenge Earth's warship, and so they listened quietly as Captain Andros spoke. "Your fleets are broken," she began, her voice calm but firm. "Your empires are fractured, and you now find yourselves at the mercy of humanity. You can choose to fight, but it will be futile. You can choose to resist, but it will be your undoing, or you can accept the new order that Earth has brought." There was a long silence as the Veklar representatives exchanged wary glances. The idea of submitting to Earth's rule was anathema to everything they had known, but the weight of the destruction they had suffered was too great to ignore. They had no answer, no way to challenge the unstoppable force that humanity had become. In the end, it was the Nezhar ambassador who spoke, his voice trembling. We accept your terms," he said, his words heavy with resignation. "The galaxy will bend to your will. We will join Earth's new order." Captain Andros nodded, but there was no satisfaction in her expression. This victory had come at a terrible cost. The galaxy that had once been a vibrant collection of diverse cultures, civilizations, and empires was now a fractured, subdued shadow of its former self. But that was the price of their refusal to recognize humanity's potential. As the terms of surrender were finalized, and the galaxy's remaining leaders reluctantly pledged fealty to Earth, the message was sent across the stars. Humanity had arrived, and the old powers were no more. Earth, once a forgotten corner of the universe, had become the center of a new galactic order, one built on humanity's resilience, ingenuity, and unyielding will. But for the people of Earth, this victory was not the end. It was only the beginning. They knew that they would have to rebuild what had been lost, both in their own world and in the galaxy as a whole. It would take time, diplomacy, and effort to heal the scars of war and forge a new peace. But the human spirit, forged in the fires of adversity, would not be easily broken. And so, as Earth's warship remained stationed above the Vector capital, the galaxy watched in silence. The new order had been established. Humanity had triumphed. The stars, once a symbol of infinite possibility, now stood as a reminder. Earth had claimed its place among them, and there was no turning back.